I can't see Rohit.
Yeah, I think he's dropped off. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the sixth session of NRAI's Insider's Guide to F&B, powered by Petpooja. I'm Gauri Devidyal, a Mumbai-based restaurateur and co-founder of the Food Matters Group, which includes restaurants such as The Table and Mag Street. I'm also the Joint Secretary at the NRAI, and I'll be moderating the session today. So, to give you some background behind the NRAI Insider's Guide to F&B, powered by Pet Puja, it's an exclusive 12 event series focusing on everything one needs to know about the various aspects of running F&B businesses and for what will hopefully help each one in becoming a pro restaurateur. As part of this series, NRAI will be conducting regular knowledge sessions, so please stay tuned on social media handles of NRAI for updates. Regarding today's session, I think it's fair to say that post-COVID, we've seen a huge drain in manpower in the F&B industry, with a lot of people choosing to shift to other industries with less volatility, during COVID. And post-COVID, the industry has bounced back, and with that, with the number of outlets opening every day, there's a new challenge of demand supply facing us. Keeping this in mind, we've kept today's session to be about learning how to manage, train, and retain employees in restaurants. And to guide us on this subject, we have a great lineup of speakers joining us to share their insights. Our first speaker is Sashmita Nayak, who's the GM of Human Resources at Massive Restaurants Private Limited. In her opinion, HR stands for human relationships. Relationships in HR matter more than anything. And starting her career in the HR profession, she's gained and grown on her expertise in startups, implementation, and execution in the hospitality and F&B space. She's been instrumental in building up the brands in her current organization since inception. And as a passionate HR business partner, she focuses on impact and guidance. Our second speaker is Rohit Kumar, who is the Chief Human Resource Officer at Westlife Food World, which is the master franchisee of McDonald's restaurants in the West and South India. Rohit has over 16 years of core HR experience across the retail industry, including apparels, eyewear, food and grocery, and now quick service restaurants. And in his current role as CHRO, Rohit is focused at making McDonald's become a future ready by primarily focusing on driving cultural learning and talent transformation across the organization. And last but not least, we have Sheval Desai, who is the director of Paid Puja, a next generation restaurant management platform offering state of the art POS software to manage restaurant billing, inventory, online orders, menu, and customers. Fondly known as the Google of Paid Puja by his colleagues, Sheval oversees the company's marketing, business development, and tech innovations. And along with his team of professionals, he also plays an instrumental role in building Paid Puja's advanced products such as Paid Puja payroll, waiter calling device, voice ordering kiosk, order serving robot, etc. Aside from these core responsibilities, Sheval drives SaaS implementation at the company to streamline the processes for the other teams. The speakers will take up questions after they're done with their presentations. So please feel free to write your questions in the comments section throughout the session, and we'll be sure to take them up at the end. Over to you, Sashmita.
Thank you, Gauri. It was a very kind introduction. Thank you so much. I would request for my presentation. All right, we'll be touching base the kind of very primary requirements of HR, starting with one of the major topic, which is a very key concern for a lot of us. So leave and timing policy is something which is very critical when somebody is kind of working. So a couple of things which is very important, which we would like to kind of discuss here is leave has to be very flexible, though it's a privilege, but it's something which actually helps you kind of having more productivity. So we believe in flexible leave policy and time management. Biometric geofencing is something which is critical to organizational goal as well as in individual outputs. So this is again which can be driven by any organization via HRIS. So we believe in that it has to be automated to avoid transactional, activities. And then complementing leaves, any working hours, additional working hours with compensatory off or paid off is something which is very critical. Flexible timings is very is something which we prefer, that person is kind of contributing and focusing towards the main goal of her work. It's not something which has to be very orthodox, which is like you start at 9:30 or end by 6:30. Nothing like that. It has to be wherein you are concentrating on closing your work and giving all your best and having the best output. So I would request Rohit to take this up in terms of his viewpoints on QSR section.
Sure. I hope I'm audible. Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Rohit, you are.
Yes. So, morning, everyone. Glad to be part of this. And thanks to NRAI for NRAI to invite me for the panel. Interesting set of topics because HR and people practices are always very touchy in subject as such. But thanks for putting the slide up, Sushmita. So, leave policy, when you look at so at McDonald's, we have a very flexi leave policy wherein, of course, it's divided between stores and corporate separately. But for store employees, as per the Shops and Establishment Act, we have ensured that there is at least about 21 earned leaves that an employee gets, in every year as a part of their working. And additionally, we also plan for about 6 days of casual or sick leaves, so that's roughly 1 in 2 months. So about 27 days of leave is what we give to employees on an annual basis. Additional to that, needless to say, women employees get the maternity benefit, which is roughly about 26 weeks, which is almost 6 months that when people work with us, with a condition that the employee should have been with us for at least 240 days in a year. So if you have been with us for about eight months in a year, then obviously you will be eligible for the maternity leave. So that's on the leave policy. When it comes to the time management, yes, we do have our biometrics. um, like most of the organizations where the time in and time out are absolutely well captured. From a timing point of view, I would say that we have both set of part timers and full timers in working with us. Now, full timers obviously work with a 9 hour shift with a 1 hour of break. That's what we follow in McDonald's. And when it comes to part timers, we also have almost 50 to 60% of our people who are working as part timers. Now, these are typically the college goers and the students who want to take a break but still need some bit of money to either fund their own education or maybe go outside and help the family. So it could be both. But they always have a flexibility to work 4 to 5 hours. And McDonald's is, of course, we are a food industry, so we clearly know that the lunch and dinner timings are the most critical when it comes to the business per se. So the flexi timing, we schedule our people in such a way that there is a lot of people who are supporting our kitchen and service. When I say kitchen, which is the back end, and service, which is the front, uh, primarily at the lunch time, which is, I can say, 1 to 3, and also evening time for dinner, which is probably around 7 onwards till closure of the store. So that's largely around time management, that we have both part timers and full timers. So 9 hours of working for full timers and 4 to 5 hours for part timers. Compensatory off, definitely yes. As a standard, we have three leaves, which are three holidays rather, which are prescribed by the government, which is Independence Day, Republic Day, and October 2nd, which is Gandhi Jayanti. These are the three holidays which is mandatory for us to give compensatory off. So for these three holidays across the year, we give them a compensatory off. But for the rest of the holidays, so we have roughly about 9 to 10 holidays in a year that we have, and there is an additional pay that the employee gets. So that's largely, Sushmita, how we have it in McDonald's. And flexi timing, I have always already covered. This is to attract a lot of people who are participating in this call, as well as to, is there a possibility of working with us with the flexibility that McDonald's provides for working at the stores. Um, Encouraging leaves other than accumulating the same, absolutely yes. We would want our people to take leaves, and rather than just accumulating and encashing them at the end of their tenure. That's something that we have always ensured, that we need a balance for people to manage their work life. So if I've covered and touched upon most of the points, Sushmita, back to you.
I would just add up to this, like a couple of things I was like broadly discussing. In terms of additional hours, which we kind of like, because this is an industry wherein people do put in a lot of working hours. So how do we do it is like somebody who's worked at a stretch for let's say 14 hours or 12 hours. In that case, what we do is we compensate with a day off. So they have this probability of wherein they can actually kind of have avail that particular day's compensatory off within the span of next 3 months. So that's something which is additional to your when you're working during offs or when you're working on holidays. These are additional compensatory off which they have. And when we say flexible leave policy, it's basically like we don't go by a like that earn leave cannot be clubbed with casual leave, or it cannot be clubbed with your compensatory off. We give this leeway that employee can actually do it based on their requirement versus if operational needs are there, then we kind of balance out between both employee and us. So that's how we generally work. So these were some additional inputs which I thought I'll just give it over here. Yes, we can kind of go to next slide. Okay. This is a very touchy point, hiring and retention. This is a key to, I guess, any F&B company. I think this is something which needs to be managed well, though we find it very difficult in terms of managing. But yes, we have to think out of the box in terms of how do we hire and retain, because most of the time we prefer getting people from hotel management background or at least 8-year company 8-year colleges. But I guess we should collaborate more with with colleges, with NGOs, and with institutes which are small timers, and pick up certain people who kind of fall in the category of wherein they have right attitude and right caliber to kind of pick up this job and then train them further. So this is what majorly makes a sense, wherein we kind of associate with various kind of levels in terms of getting people fresh hire as well as hirings from non-HM background also will make a lot of difference when people know that they are being kind of valued in terms of what they contribute, their skill set, and the kind of enhancement they would have in their job. So these are some of the key things which we have to take care if we need to retain our staff. So attrition can only be managed if we take care of their entire cycle with us, and we ensure that they've been taken care of. We kind of listen to their grievances and try resolve as much as we can. So these are some of the things which I would like to put across. Work life balance, though we try a lot via flexibility, but then still this remains a challenge wherein we have to manage both employees work life balance as well as their as well as the kind of working hours they put in. So we would discuss about the retention in later slides, wherein we are also kind of combining it with how do we kind of provide incentives, perks, and what do we do in terms of like your yearly appraisals. These are also very important in terms of retention. So these are my points which I wanted to put across. Rohit, you can share your points, your views.
Sure. Thanks, Ashmita. Broadly, it is very similar to what Ashmita said, but we have one particular program which is run by the government, which is called NAPS NAPS, which is the apprentice scheme that we run in collaboration with the Indian government. It's a great initiative by Indian government to support apprentices in retail primarily, right? And if I look at this particular thing, what is the highlight is if you are 15 years old or 16 years old, if there are people who are participating in this call who are young kids who want to get into a job, you can go to this portal and get registered yourself under the National Apprentice Scheme, and then we hire through NAPS, and what happens with NAPS is that there is no provident fund any other deductions as such. So you will get slightly higher enhanced salary. And so what happens is a large portion of enhanced salary comes through the organization to you, and that is also a certain fee from the government that comes to you directly into your account. I think it's roughly about 1500 rupees per month. So you get compensated by the organization as well as by the government. So and it's been working terrifically well across retail. So it is not like I won't get the money. It is not like that. The government is smart enough to ensure that it is all timely paid. So that's one point that I would add to what Sushmita said. But other than that, we have a very strong referral policy in terms of our hiring as well. So when it comes to referral policy, once there is an employee who is working with us, if he or she wants to refer a family or a friend, not necessarily in the same store but in another store. Family, of course, we have a policy where family members cannot work in the same store, but another store or a friend, they also get a certain amount, something like about 1500 to 2000 rupees, where it's an added income to the salary that they already earn from their working with McDonald's. But this is a flat fee that we give because you are referring your friends or family to join us and be part of McDonald's family. So that adds value, and that's something that we have really gone about. But and other statements like what Sushmita mentioned, which is around hiring from NGOs and other schools. These the IHM schools, of course, we hire, but those are primarily at the managerial roles. But two things that have really worked for us to this panel will be, one is, like I mentioned, the apprentice scheme that we run for retail, and the second will be a very full-fledged good earning potential model of referral policy, where employees are able to refer and earn, in addition to, it's like an incentive that they earn, right? So it is over and above that they can earn in terms of employee referrals, because we build in getting references through our own employees, so that we don't need to do a lot of checks with them. Because if our employees are loyal, obviously they will only refer the good guys, or the good women, friends or family who want to work with us. Retention, like she mentioned, we would touch upon in the further slides for sure. But yeah, from a hiring perspective, these are the channels we primarily hire from. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had a quick question here, right? So what is your experience been of hiring HM candidates versus non-HM candidates? At what level do you hire HM? And how easy or hard is it to work with some of these colleges, right? Obviously, IHM is the most premier institute, but there are a lot of other institutes who do hotel management, right? So how
Right.
easy or difficult is it to build relationships to do campus hiring? And I know both of you have
Sure.
very different experience and different, formats. So would love to hear from both of you.
Sushmita, you want to start or?
Yes, I would like to answer by first is campus hiring would begin with this. Though we have very good structure in terms of management training program, and we do have fast track programs and all, but what happens is these students at times they are like highly ambitious, and uh, they have this notion of that they have to first initially stick with the hotels, and they have to cover all four major
Okay.
departments, and that's where they have this in their mind, because of which they generally kind of even if they take up with us with like it's both for QS and fine dining. So if they take up with us, they stick with us for 2 or 3 years maximum. Even that is fruitful. But the kind of profile which we hire, if you're not able to retain them beyond 2 years, the kind of investment which we do as an organization becomes futile.
Yes.
So we do have a kind of mix and match of people wherein we plan their growth and then put it across. But yes, the kind of attrition is quite high. If I have to say it, like this is something which is a bottleneck for us.
Yeah. No,
And
fair.
then you mentioned what was your next question? I mean,
So
what
how
was it?
easy or difficult is it to manage relationships with these hotel institutes to hire from? So does campus placement actually work, or it doesn't work as well?
It partially works. If I have to say in percentage, I think 20% people are retained. And if they are retained, then they grow exceptionally well. They do wonders.
Okay,
But the only thing is the retention part of these students are little lesser as compared to how it would have been. I
fair
mean,
enough.
maybe Rohit can
Sure.
can share his points.
Thanks.
And
Yeah,
view.
so interesting question. Thanks for that, Trevor. So I'll start off with saying that we hire from IHM as well as non-IHM campuses. So
Okay.
why do we do that? Is because Trevor, you will know it very well that in IHMs, QSR and dine-in may not be your first choice. There will be the Taj and Oberois of the world who will come and hire. So
Absolutely.
you signed up for that course for that, right? So you will be always a second rung, even if you pay higher, remember, right? So that's the first
Fair.
part to the question, that we de-risk the organization travel by not just too much focus on IHMs. Of course, McDonald's is preferred in IHMs for sure, but we de-risk in such a way that we also go to non-IHM campuses to hire. So the second
Hmm.
part of your question was, how does it attract? The only attraction I would say, Chevel, is, and that's what McDonald's always take pride in saying, is we have a fast track program wherein if you join us as a management trainee, in flat 18 months, if you are a superstar performer, you can become the general manager of a restaurant. Now, what does general
Okay.
manager of a restaurant mean? You earn almost 5 times of what you earned 18 months back, right? So which is like,
Okay.
imagine you join at roughly, I'm just giving a number, okay, don't
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
get this number hard coded, but imagine you join at let's say 8 to 10,000 at a crew member, right? Or
Hmm.
from a management training, maybe we pay almost 2.5 times, which is roughly about 20-25,000, for instance, for a discussion sake. Now when you move to a restaurant general manager post 18 months of rigorous assessment development, and Sashmita has a slide on that, we can talk more about it. So my USP is nothing but, in 18 months you will be managing a store which is roughly top line revenue of 5 to 7 crores. It's a big responsibility that comes to you, right?
Yeah.
But from a
Yeah.
salary point of view, we make it so attractive so that they get retained. And like Sashmita said, our attrition, Shaival, primarily happens in the first 3 months. So that is the time they
Okay.
decide whether they want to be with us or not. And we are happy with that, because if they don't want to be with us, because it's tiring, it's not easy job, right? You have to
Yeah.
be in the store, you have to keep smiling, you have to ensure the products are delivered at the, but it's highly rewarding. No other industry will give you this kind of returns. Trust me, no other industry, because you take steps, you take time, you have to prove yourself. But when it comes to QSR, and I'm not just talking about McDonald's, a lot of these people, including massive restaurants, etc., we take bets on people faster because we are in need of talent. And when we see that those spark, we won't hold ourselves back saying that, okay, let the time come. A lot of industries follow that, but I think retail and QSR is very, very fast when it comes to promoting people upwards. And that's one of the reasons people stay longer once they sit in this car. You don't get off the car quickly. You take time, you enjoy the ride, and then you are able to grow yourself up from a lower level car to a higher level car.
Fair. And do you see a difference in finesse when you hire from HM? Is there a significant difference that other sorts of trainings do not provide generally, or is that not the case? So you do get candidates with, because see, when dealing with irate customers, right, or those kinds of interactions, you need a certain finesse to be able to placate them and tell them, no, we'll take care
Sure,
of it or whatever,
sure,
right? So do you see
sure.
that significant difference?
So, so I would say that thanks to the global level of managing McDonald's, once you are in the system, Sheffield, so imagine you are from a IHM campus and I am just a part timer. The kind
Hmm.
of training that me and you undergo is absolutely same, right? So
Okay.
my focus is more on training and development, which will enable both of us to have the similar growth path. But you are from campus, so you might have a fast track program, like I mentioned. But over
Got
time,
it.
it just becomes similar,
Equalizes.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes, equalizes. And I think organizations have to invest, and especially McDonald's does that well. You walk into our store and you will feel that we have invested in our training program so well that once you're in the system, everyone is the same. Now you decide your
Correct.
fate. So it depends on your, so finesse, yes, maybe at the entry point, Cheval, but not really a decision point for us to grow the person in the future.
Got it. And Sashmita, you might have a slightly different opinion just because, McDonald's being a QSR, the processes, even the quantity of ketchup on every bread is very well calibrated, right? But when you run so many formats of restaurants across fine dining, then does it have more or less of an impact compared to something like a QSR?
I would add up by saying that yes, there is a thing like the kind of horizon which we have in terms of various cuisine specific brands and then cuisine specific formats. So, because of that,
Exactly.
the kind of requirement in terms of training is larger. And since it is very specific to the menu training and your behavioral training. So yes, this is somewhere we do have certain constraints, but we believe in on the job training and subject matter expertise, which actually does majority of the work. uh, that's what I would like to say here.
Awesome. Sorry, I'll keep dropping in if I feel like, I have some questions that,
Please, please.
would be well addressed by you guys. But yeah, please take it from
Oh,
here.
yeah, all right. So we can, okay, all right. So next is promotions and increments. I've kept it very simple over here that it is very important to kind of touch base the fundamentals of any employee cycle. So yearly appraisals and a mechanism to kind of appraise has to be very fair, and there has to be a linking between how personal goal, individuals' goal versus company's goal is considered. So this is something which is related to organizational goal, restaurant's goal, and a unit's profitability as well, which determines promotion increments of any unit. And then we do give programs which is specific to how a person kind of performs and how do they elevate from the rest of the staff. And we kind of prefer identifying a bench for those who have the potential to grow in next 3 or 4 months, depending upon internal inputs we get it from various area managers, leaders, and we create a bench pool for that. So we kind of prepare do this particular activity also, just to ensure that we have second line, third line, at least being part of this. uh, yes, Rohit, if you want to add up more over here.
Sure, thanks, Sashmita. A very similar and simple process, like Sashmita mentioned, which is your yearly appraisals. But one key highlight for McDonald's has been that this is not something that people really look up to. Simple reason that one, I'm just extending from my previous conversation that if you have to grow from a crew trainer or a crew member to a restaurant general manager in about 18 months, there is an assessment which goes to every 3 to 6 months. So the whole process of appraisals, while it happens annually like any other organization, I think what is more focused for us is how do people grow from one role to the other. So if I look at the hierarchy, you join as a crew member, then you move as a trainee squad, then you move as a shift in charge, then you move as an assistant manager, and then you move as a restaurant general manager. So that's a 5-step slide that we have got in McDonald's. And when I said 18 to 24 months, this has to happen every 3 to 6 months, right? And if you're a fast track, it's not like everyone goes through 18. Only the best of them go. So it's not like we get people and then everyone moves in 18 months. No, only the fast track. If you are not a fast track, if you are not a super performer, if you are an average performer, the average time we generally see is about 3 years, right? Which means that you will have to go through every stint 6 to 9 months, right? So every 6 to 9 months. Now let me talk about average performers, because those are your 60% of people that we have got who grow internally. So if I look at that, those are the people who gets a new role and added responsibility every 6 months, and there is a pay change when you get into that role every 6 to 9 months, right? So annual
Okay.
appraisal becomes a process for performance management and not really increment. So I'm just splitting this into two, that performance
Mhm.
management and appraisal happens every year, but increment happens as and when your role changes every 6 to 9 months. If you are good in the system, you can stay at where you are for lifelong also, but then that's not the focus for McDonald's, because we want people to grow faster. And one last point is also that, like I mentioned, we have part-timers and full-timers. So one significant change is when you move from a full-timer part-time to full-timer, because we leave the individual to choose. Let's say they've completed the education, they want to be part of our program, then the part-time becomes full-timer. There is also a significant pay jump, because 4 hours is now becoming 9 hours. So the starting from that, and then looking at every 6 to 9 months, how does the role of the individual change? That is what is more exciting for people to stay with us. Back to you, Sushmita.
Okay. So you
So
think
I
that with
actually,
the
sorry, please go ahead.
So I was just asking one question to Rohit. So you think that parallelly programs going on, like one is your regular program and the regular increment cycle, the kind of entire process, and you have another set of programs which is basically for fast track, or maybe people who needs to be kind of pushed little further based on their potential.
That's right.
Is
So
that
we don't really differentiate people. So okay, let me put it this way. Most of the roles that we are talking about, we don't have an entry level or an eligibility criteria. So gone are those levels where we would say you have to spend 2 years, 3 years, and then grow in the system. Right now, these
yes,
days, especially the new generation, they are very very
it
fast
has
to
to be.
grow. Right? Yeah, they are very impatient, and that's why attrition levels are so high. So gone are those days where we say that okay, stay with us for so many years, and it's a stability led promotion. I think now we have moved into more a merit led promotion, wherein you're a top performer, you can grow faster. If you're a laggard, then you stay back, right? And that's why I said that, like you mentioned, and thanks for highlighting that, it's about 20 to 30% of our overall population that grows faster in the system, and that's a good number for any organization, right? It's not like
Exactly.
100%, and the rest of 60-70% takes their own time. But if you are a fast striker, you want to grow faster, then obviously McDonald's becomes a place, and that becomes very attractive for people.
Sure.
So, when it comes to increments, do you have a structure where, a certain percentage of the increment is dependent on profitability of the unit, certain percent of the profitability of the company, and certain percent on performance, right? And so, yeah, I have two questions, but let's address this one first. So, do you have that kind of structure, or is it, a full slab given to you saying, hey, this is the
So
maximum, and then you can fit people in?
sure. So the first part to it will be, Shaival, that as and when the minimum wages of the state changes, there is a need for
Fair.
increment, right? That is a standard. So that has to happen irrespective of appraisal, right? Now imagine
Yeah.
a state like, I'm just giving an example, a state like Maharashtra or maybe Bangalore. If they decide, no, no, I will revise the annual, what do you call, the minimum wages in the month of October, then that becomes the norm for the year. Then there is no further increment that we give because they follow that cycle, right? The second part is obviously based on performance. There are two cuts to it. One is saying that
Mhm.
okay, what is the regular appraisal that I can get, and two is what are the monthly incentive that I can provide to people to earn more. So incentive will be very independent from the appraisal per se cycle, whereas at the same time, if you look at the annual appraisal will be a certain other number. But and that's why I said, Cheval, that interestingly, appraisal is not something that we look forward to. And I'm only talking about stores right now. Don't get me wrong for the
Fair.
corporate, because
Not on
corporate this
corporate.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So for stores, this is not something that people look up to, because a, the store incentives are strong. B, the increments are dependent on their fast track promotion and career progression. And C, the minimum wages as per the state we anyways have to revise. So these three cover a large portion of the whole year if you look at as an employee.
Got it.
I would just
Fair.
add up to this, like in my current organization and also my previous organization, we have also had similar kind of thing. We still have, like, we have different incentive structures and then payout mechanism wherein employees are rewarded based on the entire restaurant's I mean, once they achieve targets, and if let's say they achieve regular targets for a quarter, so there are different structures which are being awarded to them, to the managers and to the chefs, and also the area managers who are leading them from corporate. So these are also there. And
Okay.
yes, in between we have that kind of system wherein the balance scorecard system works on various parameters. The major key parameters which we used to kind of work on was people, process, profitability, and customers. So these were the four major criteria based on which entire organizations, or let's say restaurant per se or unit per se, are being bifurcated into their output and their growth. So if you go further into, I mean, if you deep dive, then you also have ratings associated with this. It can be, if let's say process, it can be through attrition, it can be through retention, it can be through how fair you are with respect to FSSI scores, your hygiene scores. So all these are very minute things of all these four major pillars. So this is how we used to kind of do it when we're talking about balance score card system, or we're talking about ratings, or if we're talking about any such incentive programs which are linked to various factors. So this is something which
Got it.
I wanted to add on over here.
Sorry, and one last slightly tricky question is, see, a lot of times there are employees who are very good at their job, right? But what happens is they've been with the company for say 5, 6 years. Their salaries are way above someone, who what a fresher would get. unfortunately they don't have the skills to rise to a leadership role, right? Do you actually want churn in such roles? Do you encourage churn in such roles? Or what, or because you will not be able to keep giving increment for the same kind of quality of work, right? Which is already good. I'm not saying it's not good, but they're not right for leadership, right? How do you deal with that?
Here, I would add up to this saying that they have to be encouraged for taking up different roles. Not, let's say, it's not something which they have to grow next level up, but at least parallelly, they can be given additional tasks which they can take up in their own capacity. So we prefer doing this first rather than kind of, expecting that. I mean, the obvious way is that we part ways, but that's not something which we have to invest a lot of time and money on an employee so that they groom themselves and they kind of become better. So if we kind of put these kind of things into a person, uh, they'll somewhere be emotionally connected, as well as they'll be connected because they're being getting trained and they're getting elevated in terms of what they were doing since so long. This is our first
Fair.
preference. Second is, obviously we'll have to see if their role fits into any other level, and we can fit that particular profile for other format or brand or any that of that nature. So that is something which we prefer.
Fair.
So, Shavel, in our case, uh, yes, churn is important. Let me tell you that as much we love our people, at the same time, if
Yeah.
performance matters to us, right? And we, for us, performance is number one, and that's something that we will never get away with. So there is a definite churn that happens every now and then. So few are voluntary, few are involuntary. What is the difference between the two? Basically, is voluntary is where people exit by themselves, and involuntary is where we ask people to leave because of their performance scores, etc., etc. So that happens. So yes, just to answer your question sharply, there is churn which happens, but churn is primarily either because of the personal reasons or maybe because of the performance issues, where as much we pamper our people, we are also very performance focused, saying that okay, we need performance from people.
Fair enough. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you both.
Yeah. All right. So we can move to next slide in case there's nothing. Okay. All right. So next is employee engagement. This is a very even this makes a very critical part of the entire HR function. Though we are always kind of involved with a lot of transactional things, uh, it's very important to have our employees happy and content so that we have the maximum productivity output from the team. But yes, we do have grievances from a lot of people, which I won't deny for. So what we basically prefer is we believe in kind of having an open door policy, and wherein they can reach out to us directly to any leadership team members or anybody at the area manager level. And also as an HR, what we do is we try and touch base with each of them through one-on-one meetings without involving the senior HOD or the person as such. But yes, this activity requires a lot of time, so we do it quarterly to the best. And then we have grievance forum wherein people do reach out to us either via mails or they talk to us or they call up or they mail us, and then we take up based on their grievances which can be managed. Apart from that, we have various engagement programs wherein we kind of uh, run programs which is basically based on how they're doing in terms of upselling, in terms of the best the person who sells highest number of chef's menu, or let's say the highest seller in terms of bar mocktails, cocktails. So we have different programs which we run at various levels depending upon the need of the hour and based on organizational goals. So maybe Rohit can put on, his viewpoints over here.
I think Rohit is rejoining, but I had a question here, Sashmita, till he joins. So what kind of do you run like group activities to enhance team bonding and as such with the team, within the team? Because see, in large format restaurants, the teams are large, right? And this is a high velocity work environment, right? Some people, if the food is not out in time, there's going to be tussles between the teams, right? How do you ensure
Definitely.
that,
There are
the employees
conflicts.
exactly, I'm sure. I'm sure. So, how do you ensure that those tussles are resolved amicably as much as possible between teams themselves, rather than because once they come to you, right? It's gone over the. It's essentially hit a dead end where they cannot resolve it themselves. So, how do you ensure that most of the time they
We have
yeah.
to go deep dive into this with various mechanisms which we do. So, for example, if it's related to a conflict, we sit together with an HR person because HR person acts as a neutral guy, and then we kind of hear both the solution. I mean, both the issues, and then resolve it by amicably making them understand all the factors, which is uh, towards the goal of organization as well as the restaurant. Second, what you said was how to handle and how to kind of handle the entire team's activity as such. We do town halls. So when I say like quarterly, we also cover town halls wherein we kind of celebrate their birthdays. We kind of reward and recognize via Employee of the Month, Spot Awards, through special awards, and then also wherein teams are recognizing each other because they are working together. And also in the entire town hall structure, we also have team building activities wherein teams who generally don't interact much, we put them together and make them do those activities and kind of brief and debrief. So these are some of the common things which we do it. And we do
Awesome.
have formats which are basically cloud kitchen also. So for cloud kitchen, it's not possible because we don't have that kind of space. So for them,
Yeah.
it's usually that the person who's done well, we kind of go there and celebrate with them and put it on the dashboard. This is what we
Okay.
have initiated for formats like this. So cloud kitchen formats, you don't have literally you don't have space to kind of even do any activity per se. Yeah.
Fair. True.
Yes.
Rohit, over to you. Sorry, if you have anything to. Rohit, I think you're on mute. We can't hear you. No,
Can we move
we
to the
still
next
can't
slide,
hear you.
Neha?
No, Rohit is
I
trying
guess
to
Rohit
talk, but
has
I
to
think,
speak.
Oh,
Rohit has to
yeah.
speak on this. The previous slide. You want me to take up? I'll take up this. So, kind of continuation to previous slide, employee perks and benefits. Some of them I have touched based over here. So, employee perks and incentives are something which is very critical. Uh, we being from F&B space, at times it is very difficult to kind of give everything in cash rewards or something like that. But then yes, perks are something which also makes an integral part of it. Uh, as I mentioned that in when you're working, you should be allowed to have meals as per. Uh, it should not be charged, so we don't charge any meals to any of the employees. We have a very liberal employee discount policy, which is basically 35% on both food and alcohol. And then apart from that, we have certain limits which are actually a perk to people who are at managerial grade and above, wherein they can actually consume that much of amount in a particular month, and that is not something which is chargeable. So this is something few of them. And then programs like, which is basically incentivizing the teams. So if let's say a team is achieving their target for a particular month, there's some cash rewards which are being distributed amongst the entire team, and they also get this particular amount which they can spend on team parties, and they can celebrate within the team after working hours. So these are some of the things, and of course there are various things to add on. uh, that's it from my end. So Rohit can maybe
Yes, you
add
can
his
hear me.
points. Partially you're
Yes, we
audible.
can.
Partially,
Yes.
okay. There is some bit of network. I'm really sorry for this. Can't help much. Bad day to have the network problem as well. Uh, Having said that, if I look at the employee perks and incentives, I slipped on the previous slide on the engagement and recognition. Very similar to what Sashmita said. We have our standard monthly recognition program. So that's at a store level. At a quarterly level, we have a regional recognition program wherein all the store managers come together and meet. And at an annual level, then we have a something called an all staff, which is an annual town hall. Last year we had this at Pattaya, where all our store managers also traveled. We had about 700, 800 people coming together. So this year we are going to have it in Mumbai. So every year we alternate years, we take them for a trip. So again, those are the perks that you get working with McDonald's for sure. But coming back to the point around incentive and policies, etc., I think Shiva touched upon it slightly earlier, that it is absolutely linked to the sales. Second, also we have something called a GGI, which stands for Golden Guarantee Index, wherein customer service, Google rating of our services, and also the 100% kitchen processes are also important for you to earn that incentive. If I put a monetary fact to it, you can almost earn 25% extra of your salary. So imagine if your salary is 10,000, just giving an example, you are eligible to achieve another 2,500 every month as part of this store incentive program based on store achieving the numbers, whether it is sales profitability or, like I just mentioned, GG. So these are the parts that I would touch on the incentive policies.
Sorry,
Would you like
quickly, what is the level of flexibility that, maybe a store has in deciding who to reward and recognize? Because corporate might not see the contribution of every individual, right?
So
So do you,
structure is
yeah,
So framework is given by us, and we keep
okay.
revising those frameworks once in 6 months.
Rohit, we lost your
like
voice.
your voice is you're not audible. I guess Rohit, you're not audible.
Ro- Rohit, you're,
I think maybe we should move to the next slide.
yeah.
Uh, Next slide. Yeah. So basically, I think this would be something which is very critical. Though we are mid-sized organization, so I would keep it simple. And in whatever organization I've worked earlier, also this is something which requires a lot of collaboration with your peer departments, because this is something to work along with your company goals, and as well as your restaurant goals, and then kind of devise a entire KPI program. So how we had done earlier was, we have two set of working here, which is basically for executive profiles and which non-executive profiles. For non-executive profiles, which are basically so all your major goals are related to how they behave in a restaurant. So as I spoke earlier, which was basically to kind of evaluate them on the basis of people, process, uh, profitability, and customers. So these are the four major areas which they are being kind of evaluated, and rest 20% is mostly on the behavioral. And behavioral is basically linked to your how punctual you are, how what the kind of attitude you have, how much do you support the other departments. So these are few of the behavioral aspects which we used to put in. And for executive profile, what we used to do is, we kind of have a self evaluation format which they rate themselves. And all this four major areas which I spoke about, these are your 40% areas, and rest is there, uh, because every department and every designation would have a different set of KRAs. So they'll be evaluated on the SMART goals, which is basically quantifiable, and how many number of hours training they've done. So what is the number of menus they've sold? What is the total number of uh, like it can be specific to designation, so I'm not getting into details there. So for self evaluation, we used to kind of rate them based on how they rate themselves and how we rate them, and then kind of arrive at a consensus, and then kind of you know put them under various slabs of increments and appraisals, right? And yeah, that's it, because this is the basic which we follow as of now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, so sorry on the last point in the previous thing, Shaval, just to close that the framework
Sure.
is set by central team, whereas so what is to be recognized is finalized by us, whereas who to recognize is finalized by the store. So store team have complete freedom to choose whom they want to recognize. So that's a quick answer to the
Okay.
last question you asked me. On this particular thing, we have slightly different model wherein very similar to what Sushmita said, but what we have done is we have identified every unique role in the organization and defined the key deliverables for that role. So let's say, for example, if store manager is one role, the
Mm-hmm.
key responsibilities or KPIs, in for a better terminology, for someone who is in Chennai vis-a-vis someone who is in Bangalore or someone who is in Surat will all be the same. Only the value changes. So if you are driving 4 5 things as a store manager, that will remain to be absolutely same for all the people across the country that we have got, but only the value changes. Someone might be driving sales of 1 CR, or maybe someone will be driving 7 CR. So only the value changes, but the unique roles are identified on the KPIs. The second part to it is we have slightly different model wherein not only the KPIs but the key deliverables for that role. So let's say, for example, if you are selling
So, Sashmita, till Rohit rejoins, I had one question, right? How do you take, I mean, how much of the recognition is qualitative versus quantitative? And in a, industry that has so many variables, how easy or difficult is it to quantify? For example, does KPT time play a role in the KPI of a chef, right? And what are the kinds of KPIs that you internally use? Because see, when you're starting a restaurant, I don't know what all I can quantify, right? And I want to keep the things as transparent and measurable as possible. So, can you go through the list that certain points that you follow as KPIs?
I would
Rohit,
like to
sorry, I'll
answer
just
for
yeah. No, go ahead, please.
I would like to just answer for chef as of now. Some key
Mm-hmm.
factors which what I can think of right now, I can tell you, is for example, a chef is generally is custodian of taking care of entire quality of the food, inventory,
Yes.
pilferages, and food cost. So these are key factors which will actually define how his entire kitchen works. So if these are anywhere, it's plus and minus, it will definitely impact his entire performance. So we generally quantify these things, and we have a monthly budgets for food cost, and then there's a certain percentage which is linked for a restaurant depending upon the number of covers, that what percentage is allowed as CCG. When we say CCG is basically your crockery, cutlery, glasswares. So there are various factors which we kind of try and quantify, and then this becomes the key pointers for any evaluation as part of SMART goals when it comes to
Okay.
quantifying
Fair.
the key performance indicators. I've
Interesting.
just given one example, so every designation and every role would have a
Would
different
have different,
indicators.
yeah, KP. Yeah, fair. But most of these are tracked and put in numbers, right?
We try to quantify as much as we can, because accountability comes from on all these factors which
Fair.
are measurable, so you know that what you're doing is what's there. So it's there in
Correct.
front of you, so whatever you do, it's basically something which cannot be altered, or it cannot be something which is very ambiguous.
Awesome. Thank you, Sashmita. So, Rohit, I had just asked Sashmita about, how much of and what all are the things that you quantify KPIs on, essentially, right? So, I mean, because as a restaurant owner, I'd like to know what all things the largest restaurants in the country are actually quantifying, right? So, if you could
So
run through, some of them, that would really
no,
help.
very interesting question. And what we have is two systems, Shavel, and it's very interesting again from a McDonald's. So any KPI has to be quantifiable. Okay, not a single KPI
Perfect.
can exist which is non-quantifiable. So you take even HR department. For us, I have clear targets as to what is meeting standard, what is exceeding expectation. So I was just highlighting a couple of points. One, most of our people won't have more than 7 to 8 KPIs, so that it is very crisp and clear, so that people understand. Second, it is all quantifiable and measured on a, like you just mentioned, monthly, quarterly, or whatever basis that we want to track, right? Now, what happens to the behavior? Because we should not park the behavior aside, right? So that is separately captured through our talent conversation, saying that is the person behaving in the right way for them, for the person, him or her, to grow in the system. So performance and behaviors are two different things, and performance, to just simply answer your question, is 100% KPI oriented, quantifiable.
Quantifiable. Perfect. Awesome. Super.
Back to you.
Can we have the next slide, Neha?
I think that was it.
I think that's the last slide. So,
Great.
Cheryl, over to you to talk about your software.
Okay. Guys, I know everyone hates ads, but this one is actually relevant to the topic. So I'll just quickly take you through a new product that we've introduced. So Petpooja, as a lot of you might know, is a point of sale software. That's what we've traditionally provided. We've actually launched a new product in the market that is a biometric attendance and payroll system called Petpooja Payroll. It's a simple device. It's a very, very simple device that you can plug and play. It's Wi-Fi connected, so it has biometrics. Everything essentially will be captured in it. So all punch-ins will be captured. It's a very rugged device. You can use fingers and palm as well. See, we know a lot of dishwashers or other service staff have their fingers worn out, right? And we understand that the service industry has such nuances. So we have captured that also. It's a cloud native device, so you don't need to get any separate software. You don't need static IP. You don't need to transfer Excel files using USB. None of that. All of that comes directly online on the web portal and the app. It's coupled with a very, very easy to use software. We understand that SMBs don't like a lot of complexities, right? While all the functionalities are available, you only use what you want to, so that you don't have to configure 100 things before you can start using it. We made it for retail, so it's made in mind with multiple locations with centralized control, right? So you have shifts, planners, and I'll take you through the next slide on what it has. It has You can onboard an entire restaurant in under 20 minutes. Right from designations to employees to shifts, all of that can be done in 20 minutes, right? And it's coupled with Paid Puja's 24/7 support. So if there's anything at all, you can always reach out to us, right? So quickly take you through the features that we have. So the first is attendance management, right? So why do you need a biometric, right? So you can do it on pen and paper. The problem is that first, when there's friendship between staff, obviously, timings can be manipulated. Second is your manager has to work with that server every day. You don't want to bicker with him for 5 minutes, right? So what you're essentially doing is you're making the system the bad guy instead of the person becoming the bad guy, because understand that you have to work with that guy every single day, right? That is why you actually should have biometrics, because the system becomes the ground truth, the systems becomes the bad guy. You can keep track of all the breaks that your staff takes. That's very important, because see, you don't want to have some staff taking more breaks and some staff taking, it does not remain an equal atmosphere. So with biometric attendance, you can track all of this. The second is shift management, right? So restaurants work in shifts, right? You could have break shifts, you could have multiple shifts where you're only open for lunch and dinner, right? So all of this you need to have very proper shifts defined. And we have actually a very interesting thing called a planner, right? So what happens is, say, in an office, right? In Pet Puja, for example, if my designer is not present in the office today, the restaurant is not, my office is not going to shut down, right? You're still going to be able to perform. But if two of your servers in a four server restaurant are not present, you cannot serve people, right? You're going to be struggling the entire day. So what our planner does is according to the shifts configured, according to the leaves that people have taken, we are actually going to tell you, say, hey, you're falling. If you've configured that minimum, I will need 3 servers. I'll actually alert you saying, hey, tomorrow, you, according to the shifts and the leaves that are there, you only have 2 staff present. So you need to take some kind of action, either shift someone else's shift to tomorrow, or you'll have to do some kind of get a part time or whatever you need to do. But we essentially tell you that you will need to do something here and come in. The third is what we've talked upon is leave management. So leave management is obviously, in a lot of restaurants, leaves are मैं कल नहीं आ रहा हूँ, right? Or I'm going on 10 days leave. But at the end of the year, when he asks for 2 more leaves, you don't know how many leaves are already taken, right? You actually need to factor that in, keep a track, so that again it remains equal for all staff, right? This is made with, for example, there are certain staff members who will take, 20 days together because they're from a distant location, while someone who is local might take, one leave every week. So all these kinds of permutations and combinations are possible within our system itself. And the last and the most important thing, after doing all of this, after calculating for overtime, after deductions or penalties that you have for late arrival, we are actually going to comprehensively calculate your payroll, right? So that not just means that the compliances that need to be done, the PF, ESIC, the heads, the HRA, TADA, all of that, we'll actually bifurcate it. Very soon, we're also going to be generating the files that you need to upload on the PF, ESIC portals. And we'll also be doing the payout. So you just need to pay out into one single escrow account, and we will pay the 100, 200, 500 employees on your behalf, right? So it's an escrow account. We don't actually get the money. It's a service because you can do it in one click. You can do all the entire payout in one click. Um, Apart from this, we're also coming up with, we know how retail industry functions, right? So for example, if a staff has taken 10 days of leave, we will alert you one day before he's going to come back saying, please give him a call, right? Because you want to ensure that he's going to be sitting on the train or bus tomorrow. Otherwise, if you call him on the day, he is there are 100 excuses, right? You don't want that to happen. So we understand what, from a management perspective, in an Indian perspective, what managers require. So we have all those features inbuilt. So yeah, please do, please take a demo and see how the system performs. We're sure, for retail, we understand it in our heart of hearts. We've been doing this for 10 years. So yeah, I'm sure it will suit every restaurant chain.
Thanks, Trevor. Thank you. And thank you, Sashmita. Unfortunately, Rohit had to exit the session. We do have a few questions. I will start working my way through them. What can be a compensatory policy for 11 to 15 hours working? Sashmita, what do you all do?
So based on what I had mentioned, like since it was a policy which I had mentioned, so but how do we manage wherein it is either beyond or it's lesser? So let's say a few hours here and there. So next day we kind of compensate by giving some short leaves, or they can come late in the on the shift. So that's how it is done for working hours less than 14. So if it's 14 and above, that we compensate. So let's say if you have for a month you have 4 leaves and you worked on two weekly offs of yours. So 4 plus 2 will become 6. So somebody who wants to take a combined leave for 6 days, they can take up. Definitely, this is something which needs to be kind of approved and should be in sync with operational requirements. But yes, this is how it is done, and we give a kind of timeline for 90 days during which you have to avail these leaves. So people generally take compensatory offs beforehand, then getting into any other kind of leaves, because that can be in their kitty for quite some time. But these are something which they have earned and they should be consuming it as soon as possible.
This is a question for Rohit, but maybe Sashmita, if you can address this. Do part-timers also have the opportunity to grow in terms of their role designation and paycheck, or is it only an entry-level crew member role for part-timers?
Since we don't have any part-timers much, in my previous organization, we used to involve them, but after considerable time and there is basically some initial assessments based on which if they can be part of that full-time program. So some assessments are required once that is being cleared, and then they kind of put on the mainstream of the program or the kind of growth they have to get into. I mean, this is based on my previous experience of what I'm saying. We don't have
Yeah, I
part
mean, I
time.
can share my experience, which is that, there are fewer roles, obviously, which are open to part-timers, in the fine dining space or premium dining space. But we do use them, for example, in things like marketing, and some of the back-end operations, like if there's data entry. So a lot of the HO roles can be used for part-timers. And, these are usually like college kids who are in their first, second, third year, where they finish college in the morning maybe, and then they have the whole afternoon available. There's definitely opportunity to grow in, I guess, the front of house and back of house. It may be a little more challenging, but again, in terms of growth. But usually, what we find with the part timers is that they start like that, and then eventually anyway intend to come on full time, or they'll work full time during, say, holidays, etc. So, I think it depends on the intent, the long term intent of the
I
individual.
completely agree. Yeah, in fact, I in my career also I had one similar instances wherein a college student was working with me in HR for 4 hours after his college, and then he became a full timer after kind of considerable time of 1.5 year. So this is basically an intent a person has, and at some places it is feasible, some places it is not. So operationally, I guess little challenging, but then I think this is something doable.
And it also works great for casuals, when you're doing events. So yeah. There's another question: in capability building, for mid to senior level leaders, what are the skill gaps or behavioral gaps that you often come across, and are they filled by internal trainers or external ones as well?
Depending upon the gaps which we have, at times, majorly we rely on external trainings. It can be specific to and to departments. Sometimes it is in terms of analytics. Sometimes it is in terms of behavioral, let's say, train the trainer kind of profile, or sometimes it is more to do with attitudes and code of conduct. So many of the things which we can take up internally, and there's certain things which we have to kind of have an external person who's expertise on this. So it is purely basis on the kind of skill gap we're working on. So it's mix and match always.
I actually have a follow-up question. You also have some all-day dining establishments. Is that correct, or is it always lunch and dinner?
It's majorly lunch and dinner.
Okay. One of the challenges we face as we have all-day dining establishments as well, is that sometimes the training gets a bit sidelined because you just can't get people to, you can't switch off the operations for that period. And if you do, then, obviously there's that loss that you have to make up for. So I just wanted to share an experience, which is that, in that case, because training is so important, it's not something that you can ignore at the cost of losing business. So on a Monday or a Tuesday, what we do is we close for like a couple of hours in the evening, and in the lean time, and still it's important to get it in. So just as a follow up on the question around training, is that it's
I'll
something
just
that
add
shouldn't
up
be
over
ignored.
here. I'll add up one point over here. I was just talking to some of the trainers. So what they do is in similar situation, they kind of do an on-the-job training. They, kind of correcting during the working hours, during the shift hours, and they keep going to the person and saying that do this, do this, do this. Or they have small, those placards when they can place it and then kind of focus on only those things which require more attention. So this is how
Mm.
many of the trainers have done that. So this is also a good thing when you have to kind of quickly fix things and ensure that this is something which they keep following during their
I
operational
think. Yeah,
protocol.
and just to add, Ravi, to your question about the skill gap, I think one of the biggest sort of attributes that I keep trying to bring into our team is to be solution oriented. So very often, especially people coming up the ranks who've been working for years, they're very used to being told what to do when they're at junior sort of positions. And I think the mindset shift that needs to happen when you move to a more senior level is to be solution oriented and not expect someone to give you the answers, but to kind of figure out the answers yourself. And that is the biggest, I mean, at the end of the day, our business is a lot about, just dealing with challenges and firefighting situations, right? So I think building that solution oriented mindset is very critical.
Yes, I would also
And the
say
only
this
way to
is
do that is to always ask
most
them, like,
important.
when they come to you with a problem, is to say, well, how would you solve it? Rather than giving the answer. So that's definitely one thing that can be filled, a gap that can be managed internally.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, I think we can move on to the next question. We have time for a couple more. Again, this is for Rohit, but maybe I think we'll have to skip that one because it's very specific to MACD. Um, again, Sashmita, I don't know if you can address this one, that as per the industry understanding is that more than 60% of the restaurant industry is unorganized. So obviously the employees are as well. How do you rate and manage people who are not educated?
We do have constraint, which is actually the truth that yes, it is unorganized, and it's quite difficult managing people who kind of don't come with that kind of background. So as like we've spoken about various headers, so there are things which will have to kind of connect with the team emotionally more as compared to how process oriented it has to be. Chefs and managers, they have the entire team working for them, so that mind shift from working for the organization, working for the person, is something which is a major miss when it comes to unorganized sector and the way we work. Yes, and of course we do have a lot of constraints. That's where the challenge is, and yes, we do a lot of firefighting in terms of resolving day-to-day things when it comes to staff, when it comes to hiring, when it comes to retention. So I mean, it's there.
So actually, this
Um,
was sorry, just to
yeah.
follow. This is very interesting what you said, right? The emotional connect and very, very interesting tactic that needs to be used, right? Do you actively encourage your chefs and leaders to make emotional bonds with these people, with people who are not necessarily very highly educated or educated at all, right? Yeah. So do you actively promote this kind of behavior? And second, how scalable is it? So what if the guy changes, right? Does that actually increase attrition in that case?
It has its pros and cons for sure, and whether you say yes or no, there is this thing bonding between the team. So if teams are connected with their chef, they would definitely put their best. If not, then there would be conflict wherein team would move on and then would not like to stay with them, or they'll come with a lot of complaints, a lot of conflicts within the team and outside the team. So yes, I mean, we don't encourage per se, but this is there. So but whenever we kind of plan a team's composition, we try to have teams which are basically mix and match from various other backgrounds and not necessarily from one person. But yes, there has to be a team cohesiveness. And in my experience and what I have seen, the best of the team which is performing and they're doing best is because they have good team bonding and they're very closely knit. uh, I don't know whether how you have noticed or not, but in all my units, wherever teams are highly cohesive, they do wonders and they actually outperform as compared to other units which are not, like if they have frequent conflicts, if they have things which are not working between the team, then it has a direct impact on your sales and targets.
I agree. I think where there's a great working rapport and just a great rapport between team members, whether it's front of house and back of house. I know there's a question here about conflict management between the front and back. Honestly, we've had a restaurant for 13 years that continues, but I think what the team, at least the senior people in the teams have understood is that while in the moment there might be conflict over an issue, relating to guest service or the food or whatever, and they yell at each other, they've understood to not take it personally, and that it is very much in the heat of the moment in a high stress situation, which this industry is. It's the nature of this industry, and literally I've seen at the end of service they're joking and smoking outside, at the back area, and everything's fine. So I think, again, when it comes to it takes a certain level of maturity where conflicts are not going to disappear no matter how old the restaurant is. And it's a matter of your approach to handling these conflicts rather than trying to completely, assume that they're not going to happen. And I think that's the thing that we can do as, at least in my role, what I keep sort of drilling into the team. Just there's another point here about for smaller businesses which don't have a big HR support structure. What I would say, and this is how we started as well, is that there are a lot of organizations that do use that provide these services, and that might be a good way to start. The HR function is to outsource it in a way. Of course, there's softwares like Cheryl was mentioning, but if you don't have a team that can do that, manage it on a day-to-day basis, starting outsourcing it to start with might be a good thing. And then as your team grows and you can justify the cost of building an in-house team, you move to bringing the function in-house. So that's what I would recommend. I think we've covered most of the questions. I actually have one question, last one, Sashmita, and it's a very specific point because this is something that we face repeatedly. And while, the goal for us is always to retain team members so that, I think that's the key to consistency, right? Retention and having people who've been doing, who understand your brand and are there day in and day out is what actually is the key to the success of restaurants. But what, you talked earlier about people going on leave, and how do you address the issue of them not coming back on time? Like you don't want to penalize people financially, beyond a point, but at the same time, that sort of professionalism and work ethic sometimes doesn't exist, or is much harder to instill, especially with sort of, less educated members of the team, where they they don't understand the impact necessarily on the wider team. How do you address that issue?
Honestly, the regular practice which we follow is like we have one-to-one connect, and we do a counseling if it's a first timer, and depending upon the kind of employee it is, if it's something which they have done it for the first time, then we counsel them and we tell them that this is the way out. So even if you want to plan something like that, you should at least inform timely so that behind your back things can be managed well. So when you're not planned, and on top of it, if it's second time or third timer, then we do penalize in some sense, in terms of suspension, or let's in terms of service charge recovery or something like that. But it's very extreme. That step we don't take. It's always important to first kind of counsel them, understand their perspective and then ours, and then also kind of be a bridge between operational thing. It should not suffer, and between the person, because very difficult to kind of have a person. They leave, they exit, then hiring a person and getting that person trained, and it's not necessary that the person is gonna stay with us for next 3 months, 6 months. So rather we invest time in counseling and kind of making that person understand, and we take a written apology or written statement from them so that they also address it.
Fair. There's a point here about, this was what I'd actually mentioned right in the beginning, that the whole post-COVID situation with the F&B industry is, burgeoning with restaurants opening, and that has resulted in a shortage of talent and people. And yes, we are all suffering as a result of that. And people do
Yes.
move. The unfortunate reality, is that people do move for even small increments in salaries. I think I'll just quickly jump in, and then of course, Sashmita, you share your point of view as well. But I think that is a reality of this business. Honestly, it's not a great precedent to set to give people those increments, mid-year, just to keep them. But at the same time, I will say, and we are a small restaurant group of 4 restaurants, and a few cloud kitchens. But what I will say is that you have to do, at a certain scale, as a restaurateur, you can take an executive decision depending on what is important to your business. But it definitely gets harder as you grow as an organization, and you cross 500,000 employees. I think at that point, having policies is more important, so that don't show favoritism. You're not making exceptions all the time, because with that number of employees, you'll be making exceptions all the time.
Many
So
examples.
I think it depends on the size of business as to where you take a call for what's important for your business. And in terms of there being an exodus to the Middle East, and places where obviously even cruise liners, etc., where people are paying are getting paid much higher salaries. Again, that's a reality that has to be dealt with. I think there's 2 things I'd say. One is that try and have a pipeline of people, so that you're never exactly at the manpower level that you need, but you always have 1 or 2 extra. Because yes, leaving to go overseas is one thing, but they may go on leave and not come back. There may be, like, they just don't show up to work, things like that. So it's always better to have a little bit of buffer if it's possible, in terms of manpower. And the second thing is that the same people who go away, they come back, especially when they want to settle down. And I think that it's really important to leave with good team members on good terms, so that when they do come back to the city, then they it's a no-brainer for them to come back to work with you. So that's the only thing I would say is, like, the reality. You can't stop people from leaving or from looking for better opportunities. And yeah, I think, Rajesh, you've mentioned that it's a challenge. It's the reality of this business, unfortunately.
Yeah, and even for that matter, this is also a constraint that you cannot have a larger team you can't have a bench of, let's say, 10% or something like that, be with you and kind of, provide that kind of support. So at times, it is very important to have a smaller team, new project outlets, or let's say smaller team who would be working as a bench, wherein they're trained in multi aspects rather than just taking one particular bit. If they are trained at multiple aspects, they'll be able to support better. So I
Yeah.
think with the kind of setup which we have, we cannot afford to have a bigger pipeline, or let's say a team which is of your total 10% of your headcount or workforce, and then kind of have them paid a different salaries. So these smaller structure works better. And yes, having pipeline, specifically when you're collaborating with colleges, wherein we know that after a certain time, these people will be trained and they'll be working with us. If we have that kind of pipeline, then it works better. Otherwise, it is little difficult when it comes to when we have real shortage of staff, and then we don't have any backup, and then you really have to manage with the current team, and also ensure that your business does not suffer, your quality of the services, quantity, and all these things does not suffer when it comes to uh, your brand is being at stake. So we do take calls which is more specific to achieving business goals. And as an HR, I think we have to partner in many areas, wherein even if it's going beyond here and there, I think we should be going we should have some exceptions.
We're going to take one last question before we wrap up, because I think it's been posted twice. From Ridhi, can you please explain LS team, which was mentioned in the employee engagement slide?
It is leadership team.
Okay.
So your main decision makers are leadership, who are key stakeholders of the company. So that was the reason when we say leadership team. So at many organization you don't have that kind of. It has a ladder system, so you cannot reach out to them directly. So at least with our organization, it's very convenient for a person to reach out to a leadership team, irrespective of how many layers in between. So that kind of flexibility which we have, so which we call it as open door policy. So with our kind of setup we still manage to do it. And this is where you are free to talk about your grievances or any issues or anything of that sort, when it comes to expressing.
Great. Thank you so much, Sashmita and Sheval, and to Rohit, but he's not here. I hope you all found the session interesting and helpful. The slides will be available on the NRAI's website, so you can always pick them out from there. And also, the entire recording will be available on YouTube and Facebook, and also on NRAI. So thank you again for joining us and for all your questions. Please do stay tuned and follow us on Instagram and Facebook to be updated about the future sessions. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so much.
everyone. Thank you, Sashmita. Thank you, Gauri. Thanks, Neha. Take care.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Gaurav. Gauri.
Thank you.
Take care. Good day.